Start our session. I think welcome to this interesting evening, the web talk. We are going to start soon. Now, in the period of social distancing, I will start with Namaste, Namaskar, and as we are in Chennai, so Vanakkam also should come here. Now, during this period of lockdown, when we all are at home, I think the kids we have seen, these pictures are all known to us. A superhero is having a supernatural power who is dedicated to fight the evil of the universe, protect the public, and battle the supervillains. And in the fight of against COVID-19, you are the real superhero. And thank you, doctor. Thank you, all the esteemed panelists and the members who are present over here. Thank you very much for your untiring effort to save all of us. Today, Tablets India actually takes pride in organizing this web talk, which is a panel discussion on the clinical practice guidelines, perinatal and the neonatal management of COVID-19. In that, today, the moderator of the evening is Professor Amit Upadhyay. Now, Professor Amit Upadhyay, he is MD DM Neonatology, and sir has completed his DM Neonatology from AIIMS. He has done his fellowship from Australia, more than 20 years of experience, current HOD Neonatology and the Pediatric of New Turner Hospital, Meerut, former head and the Department of Pediatrics of LLRM Medical College. Publications and the research paper, more than 50 international papers and different national and the regional conferences. Also, he has given his presentation. And Dr. Amit has having a special interest in the neonatal intensive care, neonatal seizures, and the neonatal pain. With that, to introduce the esteemed panel member from India as well as abroad, I request Amit sir to take over, please. Amit sir, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I cannot see myself. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can see you, sir. Yes.
We can see you also.
So, good evening, everybody. I am indeed honored to host experts of in the panel discussion today. We have Professor Dr. Sushma Nangia, who is Director and Professor of Head, Department of Neonatology at Lady Hardinge Medical College. She has special interest in, amongst all other things like resuscitation, sepsis. She has special interest in breastfeeding, and she is passionate about her breast milk bank in her hospital. And kangaroo mother care, skin care of newborn is especially her forte. But she's also looking after a tertiary neonatal setup in the government medical college, and she's looking after a lot of COVID pregnancies and neonates over there. Welcome, Dr. Sushma. Thanks. Then we have a very young and a dynamic neonatologist of our country, Dr. Deepak Chawla, who did his DM in neonatology from AIIMS and is currently Professor of Neonatology at the Government Medical College, Chandigarh. His special interest and passion is research. Probably he is the most keen researcher and publisher of research articles in neonatology at this moment in the country. Welcome, Dr. Deepak Chawla. He is also the writer of the protocol for this perinatal management of COVID, which we will be discussing. And his protocol has been adopted by IAP, FOGSI, and NNF. Obviously, there were other members along with him, but he was the main lead in this. Next. Then we have Sanjay Wazir, a very dynamic neonatologist. Everybody knows him. He's Director of Neonatal Intensive Care Unit at Cloud9 Hospital in Gurgaon. He has experience of more than 20 years in neonatology, and he has been the past president of neonatology chapter of Indian Academy of Pediatrics, especially inclined in care of premature babies. So welcome, Dr. Wazir. Now, in addition to these Indian specialists, we have very esteemed international panelists, because we know that COVID is not something which is confined to one area. And in fact, we are lagging behind. Thankfully, by grace of God, we are not as much into COVID as our contemporary countries are, like America and Europe. And so we have to have this international discussion over different areas in COVID. We have Dr. Kiran More, who is a pediatrician in Sidra Medicine Hospital in Qatar. He's a very well-known neonatologist who is seen in all the national conferences in India these days. And his specialization is in PPHN and in inhaled nitric oxide. He is master of pulmonary hypertension and echocardiography. Welcome, Dr. Kiran. Next.
Thank you.
And we have Dr. Ish Gulati. Has he joined in?
Yeah,
And
sir,
Dr.
he has
Ish
joined.
is a close friend. And he's a medical director of clinical nutrition and lactation. So Dr. Sushma, similar interests. He's also looking after babies who have special problems in nutrition and lactation. And so he's a faculty at Nationwide Children's Hospital in Ohio, USA. And we all know that USA is the hotspot of COVID infections in the world. So we would like to have inputs of Dr. Ish. Please be free to tell us how do we go ahead in our perinatal management of COVID in India. Your experience in US would be very helpful to or handy to us. Next, Dr. Makoto, has he joined us as well?
No, sir, he is yet to join.
Okay, Professor Makoto is the scientific director of neonatology at Okayama Medical Center in Japan, and he is the visiting fellow or visiting faculty at Ritchie Center for research in neonatology at Melbourne in Australia. So he'll be joining soon as well, because Japan is the place where they have taken care of COVID very well. They were able to curtail COVID due to their discipline and unique ways. He will be helpful in telling us different ways they have. Now, can you take
so
me
Amit sir, in that I will stop my sharing and you can share your screen to take this thing ahead.
We move on to the perinatal neonatal COVID-19 prevention and management. We'll be discussing the maternal aspect and the neonatal aspects both. First, a little bit of world statistics of COVID. Of the 48 lakh cases have occurred till now in the world over. About 1 lakh cases are occurring per day. This is huge. If we look at India, total about 1 lakh cases have happened over here. So we have crossed the figure of 1 lakh today itself. And we are having about 5,000 cases per day. So about 2% of the world COVID burden is on us. If we look at the deaths, daily deaths are about 4,400 daily deaths are happening all over the world. Until now, 3.2 lakh deaths have occurred due to COVID. So it is a big problem. It is a major morbidity and mortality are seen because of this. If you look at India, about 3,000 deaths have occurred in India and about 150 deaths are happening every day. So we are doing quite well on that front. A little bit of perinatal statistics I would tell to all the guests. We have about 809 pregnant women till 30th of April who have become COVID positive. Out of these 809, about 700 have delivered till now. And 71% of these have delivered by cesarean section. So what is the reason for these high cesarean rates? That we will discuss as well later on. 111 out of these 700, which is about 15% of these delivered babies, have been admitted to NICU. However, the main indication for admission has been isolation of asymptomatic babies. So most of the babies have not been symptomatic. That has been a very saving grace for all of us. And they have been admitted mainly for isolation. Only 3 babies, that is 2.7% of all admissions, but only 0.4% of all babies born to COVID positive mothers have died. So these neonates who are born to these COVID positive mothers have a very good neonatal outcome. That is something we should be happy about. Vertical transmission has been documented. Now, vertical transmission is something which everybody is very cautious about. It is suspected in about 17 cases, which is about 2.4%. However, 2 studies have reported higher incidence of vertical transmission in the rate of 7 to 9%. Most common symptom in neonatal period has been respiratory, leading to pneumonia in these babies. With this background, we would go on to our panelists for our questions. I would request the panelists to keep their answers limited to about 30 to 60 seconds, 1 minute. And then if any other panelist wants to chip in and has a different point of view, we would encourage them to raise their hands and we would invite them. And please, you feel free to chip in if you have a different point of view. It's a discussion. It's a new disease. We all know that we have made guidelines, but the experience is still too less. There are only 700 cases till now spread out in the world. So we may not know what is the best thing to do. So with everybody's experience from around the globe, we would emerge wiser after this panel discussion, most likely. So the first question to Dr. Deepak Chawla. Dr. Deepak, please enlighten us if neonates are at higher risk of acquiring COVID-19 or these newborns are somehow immune to COVID-19. Are they immunocompromised or are they better placed as compared to adults or pediatric age group in acquiring COVID-19 infections from their mothers or from the surrounding?
Let's look at whether neonates can have COVID infection or not. So as of now, evidence in neonates is not much. But if we look at experience from large studies which have been published from China or other countries, so what we see is that as of now, children seem to be less prone to infection. Either they are less prone to infection, or even if they are infected, they remain asymptomatic, they are tested less, and so less of these cases are seen among children. For example, if you look at a large study which described the age distribution in Chinese population, around 44,672 subjects, of which only around 2% were less than 19 years of age. Most of the cases were between 30 and 80 years of age, which is mostly the mobile population. So there's no separate data about neonates in this particular cohort, but very small number in children. Now, also, if you look at their symptoms, their severity is said to be less. Common respiratory symptoms are seen in 65%, mild pneumonia in 26%, and around asymptomatic in 9%, while they were being tested because of contact with a diseased person. Common symptoms which were seen in children included fever, seen in around 50%, and cough in around 38%. And almost all of these 2% cases which were there, they were seen in family clusters, contacts of adults who were infected with COVID. Now, this is experience from China, but more or less similar picture is emerging from Italy or Europe or from other countries. Can you move on to the next slide, please? Dr. Amit, can you change the slide?
Yeah.
Okay, now if you look at, sorry, go to previous slide.
We can't hear Dr. Deepak.
Sir, you can just make page up. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so this slide shows the number of cases in which vertical transmission has been suspected. So as of now, till around last time we reviewed around 4th or 5th of May, 17 cases have been reported all over the world in which vertical transmission has been reported in neonates, with age ranging from as early as at birth, test being done, or as late as day 2 or 36 hours of age run. There are cases reported in neonates later on also, a case reported in 17-day-old child, one of the earliest case in neonates from China. So what we see is that newborns do get infected, they are not immune, but the incidence of infection seems to be less. The vertical transmission rate seems to be very less. So these 17 cases, we don't know denominator in all of these, but in 2 of these studies, we had denominator. In one study, the rate of transmission was around 2%, and in second study, it was around 4%. So even vertical transmission is now starting to get reported by doing RT-PCR within as soon as possible after birth, day 1 or day 2. So these are all cases in which babies have been isolated from mother immediately at birth. So they are less likely to get infected from mother, because as soon as baby is born, baby is taken out of delivery room and the baby is separated. So if baby gets a positive result in first few days, it means baby has got vertical infection. So babies get infected, but transmission is less. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Dr. Deepak, at this slide, the cesarean rates have been very high in this. Any special reason for this? In 17 babies, 14 by cesarean section.
Yeah, so I think if you look at early experience in China, almost so this is from 17 babies which were positive. But if you look at the larger cohort, almost all pregnant women which were reported in China in earlier phase, almost all of them was delivered by C-section. Now there are two reasons of it. First reason, in even baseline rate of section in China is very high, extremely high, especially in cities. And second possible reason can be that because of obstetrician needing a controlled environment, wear a PPE kit, and they want to deliver by controlled environment, or mother is having pneumonia and she's not able to go through the labor. So maybe these are the reasons why which sections are more.
Okay.
One question which you asked were, are newborn babies less prone? Is their immune system different?
Yeah.
So what has been seen is because children are getting infected less and less. So one distinct possibility is that is something different. So what has been seen in that one particular receptor, ACE2 receptor, is involved in infection of cells, and its downregulation is involved in increased immune response, especially in lungs. So lesser expression of ACE2 receptor on cells, as is seen in diabetes, hypertension, associated with more inflammatory response, which leads to more severe disease. So this particular receptor is also has relationship with age. So as we move to younger and younger age, you have more and more expression of ACE2 inhibitors, which is possibly likely explanation that why children are having less severe disease. This is also one explanation why females have less severe disease. So young females are least likely to get severe disease. But this does not mean that neonates are immune. So the 17 cases which I showed.
The slide explains it very well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak. Thank you very much. We move on to, why are we not able to move? Yes. So the next question for you, Dr. Sushma. Do all women require COVID-19 testing prior to delivery? That is, should we have universal screening of all pregnant women? Is it mandatory before all delivery in government or private? And does COVID status affect the mode of delivery? These are the two questions which for you, Dr. Sushma.
Okay, so good evening, everyone, all the panelists and all the viewers. I will start with the national testing guidelines, wherein any person who is symptomatic with a influenza-like illness, by which we mean fever with or without cough, fever, cough, and if they have had, so these are symptomatic people, if they have had history of international travel, or they've had contact of lab confirmed case, or they are themselves a healthcare worker or a frontline worker who's involved in mitigation of COVID-19, or the person has SARI-like illness, which is severe acute respiratory infection, which means fever, cough, with or without breathlessness, but requiring hospitalization. Coming from hotspot or containment zone, all these symptomatic. Returnees and migrants within 7 days of illness, and hospitalized patients, like if somebody is hospitalized for some other reason, but develops influenza-like illness. Now, this is for all regular people. We are not talking about pregnant women, but if pregnant women falls in any of these categories, she would need to get tested. These are all symptomatic. Now, amongst the asymptomatic, if there is a direct or high-risk contact, with a confirmed case, then that person needs to be tested after about 5 to 7 days, and between 5 to 10 days, let's say, the person should be tested. Can I have the next slide, Amit? So what is important is that a pregnant woman, her special circumstance of getting tested is, even if she's asymptomatic, but she's coming from a cluster, containment area, or a large migration gathering or evacuation center, which are from hotspot districts. So she need not even be symptomatic, but she needs to be tested. And if we anticipate that the delivery could occur in the next 5 days, such a woman should be tested. So this is completely asymptomatic lady from cluster or containment area. What I would like to emphasize regarding testing is no emergency procedure, including deliveries of course, and cesarean sections, should be delayed for lack of test. The sample can be taken at that juncture, take the sample and go ahead with the delivery or the cesarean section, assuming this to be a possibly infected or a suspected case of COVID. So the care should not be something which should be denied. Next slide for, so the
Mode
next
of delivery.
Mode of delivery. So what I would just like to say is that there is currently no evidence to favor cesarean section over vaginal birth or vice versa. So there is evidence to say that the outcomes have not been different, whether the baby is delivered by one or the other way. So mode of delivery in a pregnant woman with suspected or confirmed COVID should be guided by her obstetric assessment and physiological stability rather than COVID status. So COVID
over the
per
medical illness or in the mother or the obstetric indication. Isn't it?
Obstetric indication.
Yeah, medical or obstetric indication only.
Yes,
Okay,
any of
thank
these.
you.
So it's the obstetrician's decision. Yeah.
Okay. Now, this question again to you, only Dr. Sushma. I would, on this previous question, I would like to have opinion on Dr. Ish Gulati. In US, Dr. Ish, what are you doing? Can you unmute Dr. Ish? Are you doing universal cesareans or again obstetric history based cesareans?
No, as you said, their only indications are obstetric indications only.
Excellent. That is very glad to know that we are doing what US is doing as well. Thank you, Dr. Ish. Has Dr. Makoto joined?
Sir, he is yet to join.
Okay. So the major impediment in private sector is in doing cesareans or delivery has been lack of knowledge of COVID-19 status of mothers, and it takes a long time in getting the report. So is there any way of having this report early so that the obstetrics colleagues are a bit less scared in doing a cesarean or taking this baby mother for a delivery? Dr. Sushma?
Yeah. So as I said earlier, I would like to still reiterate, lack of knowledge about the maternal status should not be an impediment to the care. So consider any unknown status as potentially suspect and conduct the delivery as you would conduct for a suspect COVID, meaning you take all the precautions and you are conducting the delivery or you are doing a cesarean section. Can we go to the next slide regarding testing specifically? So for testing, the Indian Council of Medical Research advocates RT-PCR, which should be by a nasopharyngeal or a throat swab, and as you rightly said, it takes time, about 24 to 48 hours, for the results to come back to us. The test per se actually takes something like 8 hours. There are 3 different steps to it, so it's a cumbersome thing and it is likely to take that long. The rapid testing options that are now available and have been cleared by ICMR are the CBNAT, which is the cartridge-based nucleic acid amplification test, and the results can be there in less than 2 hours. So this is basically on the Gene Expert, the way for tuberculosis it was being done. And the same machines, if you have a BSL 2 or 3 lab, biological safety, so this can be done. Now the issue with this is if it is clearly positive, which means it is looking at the N2 region of the nucleic acid, you take it as positive and you are clear that yes, this particular patient is positive. If it comes as presumptive positive, where it is looking only at the E of the nucleic acid, or if it comes as error, or if it comes as something which is indeterminate, then it has to be retested or RT-PCR needs to be done. The other test is TrueNAT. TrueNAT test is a screening test basically. So in this test, this can even be done in field settings. But the issue is if the test is negative, you like confirmatory, okay, this woman doesn't have COVID. But if it is positive, it doesn't really give you the complete information in terms of that, yes, it is positive. It needs to be repeated. I mean, it needs to be retested with RT-PCR.
But actually, this will have a lot of problem for the family, because if it's positive, then she needs to be shifted to a COVID positive hospital from there. So what is the false positivity rate of this test?
No. So the issue here is that the positive test does not really confirm that it is positive. You know, it doesn't have that kind of a great specificity. It's a
Very much utility of this test if we are not sure about its result.
No, but we are sure about negative result. If it comes negative, you're like clear it's negative. If it comes positive, then you have to go ahead with an RT-PCR. And similar is with the antibody testing, which anyways are for surveillance purpose. They're not for individual testing purpose.
The basic issue why the obstetricians are in general scared about delivering is that it's not that you have to use PPE kit in every pregnancy. The issue is that if she is positive and I do a seizure on her, then I need to go on quarantine for 14 days. My hospital will be shut for 2 days. All the staff would be in quarantine for 14 days. So the hospital and the doctor would be in quarantine. The hospital will be closed for 14 days. So
can I clarify that, Amit? I think this may be a myth with many of our healthcare staff, and we need to bust this myth. That
no,
if you are
myth
doing,
is there with the officials.
Okay,
It's
okay.
not
So
with
let's.
the healthcare staff. Healthcare would like to do this work. It's that I do a cesarean section, emergency seizure because of fetal distress, and I send a COVID test positive. 2 days later, I have this positive report. That would mean that my staff and myself have been in contact, and that would mean in the current scenario in UP, Haryana, have known that
Precisely.
the doctor has to go in quarantine.
Permit me to interrupt you here. When you say that a person has done or a team has performed a cesarean section, they have been in contact with a lady who is COVID positive. Sure, they have been. But there is no breach of PPE. They are not the ones who need to get quarantined. If there is adequate PPE and there's no breach in PPE, they continue to do their work. Imagine the setups which are continuously getting positive women, they are delivering or doing cesareans. They're not closing down for 14 days. This is completely a myth, or there is some misrepresentation of the government guidelines. They don't have to close down. They don't have to go into quarantine after doing each cesarean or each delivery of a positive mother. It is that you observe proper precautions, full PPE, you do it, and your OT is ready for the next one after you sanitize the OT.
Okay, thank you. And can we do a rapid antibody test as well in this mother? If we want to do an emergency seizure, will that help? She is asymptomatic otherwise.
It's not going to help you to decide whether this woman is actually protected because her antibody levels are here, or she has just produced antibodies to the test, to the infection. So I would not suggest antibody testing to be done in an individual patient for the purpose of diagnosis.
Okay, thank you. Now this lady was tested because she was about to deliver, but the pregnancy continued for over about 10 days. And so is there a time period beyond which we should repeat the this COVID testing in the mother? The standard guideline says it's valid only for 5 days, and if it goes beyond 5 days, your status is indeterminate. What would you say on this? Dr. Sushma? Sorry, Dr. Sanjay Wazir and Dr. Deepak?
Yeah, very good. See, the point here is that if you first, as you said, as Dr. Sushma said, it is not necessary to delay any intervention for the want of a COVID test, and it is mainly for the satisfaction of the healthcare staff and the hospital that you need to do, rather than helping the patient itself. Now, in the first place, if you have gotten it done, and that is the usual trend which there across the healthcare hospitals, especially all the private hospitals in Delhi, Gurgaon, and anywhere, I do not know, but UP, have started this trend of testing everyone at around 36, 37 weeks. Now, having said that, we had used the same policy based on the recommendation from the obstetrician. But then after 2 weeks, they come back again. We do not ask them to get a repeat test done now any further. The only intervention we ask them to do during that time is to download an Arogya Setu app, so that in case anyone comes in contact would come to know. And second thing is that we ask them not to mix up with other people and go down for walks or anywhere. So then after that, their next contact is, after the 36, 37 weeks when they come to the hospital. After that, they come only when they start with the labor pains. In between, they should not be moved. If they take care of that much precaution, then it is fine. The only caveat here is if your person was living in an area and now that has gone into a containment zone, then obviously there would be a need for you to repeat the test.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Just to interrupt, Amit sir, from Japan, Dr. Makoto has joined. So let's welcome, I think he is seen on the screen.
Okay, Dr. Makoto, welcome. Dr. Makoto is a researcher and a neonatologist in Okaya University in Japan. And good evening, Dr. Makoto.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can see you, but we can't hear you. Volume.
Okay. Okay. So, what? Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can hear you, Dr.
Yes,
Makoto.
yes. We can hear you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here.
Yes, Dr. Makoto. We'll just reflect one question to you as you just join in. Do you do repeat testing every 5 days close to delivery, or you just do it once and if she is negative, then deliver later as well? What is your protocol in Japan?
Basically, we have no cases in my hospital, but usually we will do the test repeated for every 1 week.
Every 1 week.
For adult patients.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, doctor.
Yep.
How will it move forward? It gets stuck in between. Yes.
Can I just ask question to Sushma ma'am?
Yes.
I was just reading about this rapid testing options. There's something called as LAMP, which has come up, which is more rapid. I think it's loop. It's called.
Yeah. Dr.
Sorry?
Makoto, in their unit, they are using this test itself. So Dr. Makoto would be able to answer this question as well.
So there is something called as loop
isothermal
mediated.
amplification.
Yeah, isothermal amplification, which is more rapid and it's very easy to do. Dr. Makoto, can you specify on that? Because
we have very limited number of the test kits, so it is very difficult to the frequent test.
Okay. But it is useful? You find it useful?
I am not very sure. I'm sorry.
Okay, so still it is very early stage, it means, and they have it, but probably it's in still the research stage, most of it.
okay.
Dr. Wazir, you have finished with the routine screening of pregnant females?
Yeah, I think it's like we just say the only thing that, what most people do is like, I was just putting this, that if you want to send a screen, the ICMR guideline, if you look at the next slide. Yeah, so this under category 1 to 6, no mother falls in. So you always have to put it into other category. And that is why the ICMR does not mandate it to do in India every mother. But because this is a very vague kind of a intervention here, indication here, where the parents would get.
Okay.
So the only other thing is that if you get to the mother, which route you get it, like in a nasopharyngeal versus an oropharyngeal route, and that's like an important issue. If you're doing for both, some labs like SRL does it both from the oropharyngeal and the nasopharyngeal, but then there is some data to suggest that probably the yield of a nasopharyngeal is slightly better than oropharyngeal. So if you are in fact doing one, then you should also choose a nasopharynx. And again, as I said, its sensitivity is around 70%. So it's important that any negative report should not be taken only as negative. You should still take care of the PP in all cases, yes, especially where you suspect a disease.
Sure. That's a very important point to remember, that COVID negative doesn't mean you operate it in the pre-COVID era, जैसे आप operate करते थे, you should not operate it like that. You still have to wear your PPE and then operate.
I think we just carried out this thing. So if you have, like, you're planning a surgery, you do a PCR test, antibody test is not available right now. But if it is negative, carry out the surgery. And if it is negative, positive, then in that case, either you need to inform the local authorities, send it to the CM or whoever, and then they will send the patient to the COVID hospital. Do not attempt to do the surgery of a woman who's COVID positive if you have time, because
Yes.
one, for medical legal reasons, and second, if she goes into complications, unless you are a tertiary level unit for maintaining the adult intensive care as well, you may land up in a problem afterwards.
Okay, thank you. And the other message which Dr. Sushma had given, do not repeat the test. You have already told that, isn't it?
Sure.
So the next question which we have is there any data, Dr. Deepak Chawla, on incidence of neonates or pediatric infections in COVID? Out of the total COVID cases which we have, about 50 lakhs now, what is the proportion of pediatric age group, and is there any variance across the proportions? I would request all my international panelists to contribute on this. That have you read that the Indian data, is it different from whatever you are experiencing? Can you unmute Dr. Makoto, Dr. Kiran, and Dr. Ish? Dr. Deepak, can you begin with this?
Yeah,
I
so,
think-
yeah. So, Amit, can we go to the next slide? So, as you can see, the major number of cases that have been reported are from China, Italy, and United States. And if you see the slide, cases less than 10 years old, about 1% in China of whatever was reported. In Italy, out of the 22,000 odd numbers reported. So when they looked at 0 to 18 years, 1.2%. And in the US, similarly, although the numbers were far more when this report came in, the incidence was 1.7% for less than 18 years. So by and large, it looks quite similar, let's say between 1 to 2%, although this is only less than 10 years. So for China, it's less than 10 years. And amongst infants, if you see in US that they have reported infants separately, it's just 0.3%. So I don't think that there is a large variation across the countries, because by and large children, as we can see, and which Deepak had also shown in the beginning, are much lesser affected as compared to others. That's a different story, that they could be the ones who could harbor the infection and spread it, but they don't kind of seem to be manifesting a lot. Yeah.
Dr. Kiran, at your place, you find similar incidents?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, probably less than 1%. And in the newborn, probably we are yet to see. We had 28 moms so far COVID positive. We had 1 or 2 false positive in the newborns, but we are yet to see a confirmed newborn positive. And pediatric, again, I think it's universal. The incidence what we are seeing is very less. I look after only newborns, but we have a separate COVID hospital where some kids are presented, but none of them needed any ventilation, very mild presentation, and the infectivity is also very less, probably less than 1% or 1%.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. Now, coming to the most important question, that is about which we all are very, very, very concerned. Now, if there is a mother who is suspected to be COVID positive, or who is COVID positive, or who is COVID negative, but we suspect that 30% chance of false negativity is there. So there is a lot of risk of the doctors and healthcare professionals being exposed to COVID infection around delivery. So how do we save ourselves, Dr. Sushma? How do we save ourselves, our staff, from acquiring COVID infection?
Yeah. So when we are talking about neonatal resuscitation and how do we save ourselves, yeah. So the first and foremost thing is that everybody has to follow whatever neonatal resuscitation guidelines that they have for their country specific, or the NRP guidelines which are there. And in general, you should have this, that there should be minimum number of people who are there inside the OT or in the labor room, and when they are taking care of a suspect or a positive COVID mother.
What do we mean by minimum number? 1%, 2%, 3%? How many? If it's a high-risk baby.
Yeah, so maybe you had the luxury of having 2-3 surgeons, anesthetists, some other nursing staff, and 2 from the pediatric side. So the pragmatic thing here is minimize the number that is required in that surgery or for that delivery, rather than having a lot of people, because there is a chance of exposure and infection. So but that should not compromise the care. You should have minimum number of personnel required, and they should be in full PPE, by which I mean the hazmat suit with a visor and an N95 mask. This is general. Mothers should perform hand hygiene and wear a triple layer or a surgical mask. They need not wear N95, rather they should not. Delayed cord clamping, which is a point where there is a lot of debate, and skin to skin care can actually be practiced. Both of them can be practiced, delayed cord clamping as well as skin to skin care. And if there is an issue, I will answer why I'm saying that. Endotracheal administration of medication should be avoided or minimized if you can do that. And bathing, we do not recommend bathing in our India guidelines because of the risk of hypothermia and maybe some hospital acquired infections from the bathing tank or from the from whatever you're using. So this is in general for resuscitation.
Now, at this point, there are very critical issues which have come over. So everybody in the OT is wearing a PPE. I would like to ask about delayed cord clamping. Dr. Kiran, do you practice delayed cord clamping, or our earlier policy of NNF was immediate cord clamping? We have changed it in the recent guidelines. So what do you practice, Dr. Kiran, and why?
Yeah, so I mean, we are asking COVID specific, right? So we have a now routine policy of
COVID positive mother.
Yes, yes. So we are doing delayed cord clamping. So again, as I said, our hospital was not identified as COVID center first, but now we have started. But routinely, if it's indicated and if there is a plan to do delayed cord clamping, being COVID positive doesn't differ the policy at all. We will still do the delayed cord clamping.
What is the policy at your place?
So we will do delayed cord clamping even in COVID positive moms.
Okay, and Dr.
Yes,
Ish, in US, what is the policy?
Yes, I agree with Dr. More regarding maintenance of the policies for delayed cord clamping as well as for maintaining PPEs. Now, one thing I want to tell that in the normal delivery versus C-section, obviously in the OR we are wearing all PPEs in assumption that baby may need resuscitation. That includes N95 because of the droplet exposure. If you provide even CPAP or high flow more than 2 liters per minute. However, for the vaginal delivery, what we are doing is we are standing outside the labor room, so that in case, right, and those are the recommendations by CDC as well as AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, that you can wait outside if the baby needs resuscitation, which we know that 10% of the babies might need some help. Then they will call you in, and even that we are sending only the resident or the fellow first or the nurse practitioner first, and not sending the whole crew inside.
True.
So that's a very important message, I think.
Amit, one of the practical difficulties in maintaining breastfeeding, although it's like, very pertinent.
We have not gone on to breastfeeding for now. We would be reaching there.
Sure.
Can I just comment one thing here? With just differently what we're saying. I mean, for COVID positive, I think our guidelines are also similar. One thing for COVID negative moms, which we are doing, which may be an overkill, but those moms who get GA, they get intubated, and under GA, there we are doing PPE, especially anesthetist, gynec, and even the one person is doing PPE because, there is exposure and airway intubation is involved. So there we are specifically even COVID negative, because you don't know sometimes the status, we are doing PPE for those, even COVID negative, we are doing, if they're GA, if the intubation to mom is involved. I think for COVID positive, I agree with what ma'am has explained.
Okay.
Can we go to the next slide?
Yes.
So that was general regarding resuscitation, whatever should we observe. When you come to the specifics, the arrangements that would be required is if you have the labor room, within that labor room, you have the warmer where the baby has to be resuscitated if required. If it's in the same room, it should be at least 6 feet away. The other option is that you could have a physical barrier like a plastic curtain in between. better option would be if this can be done outside. So if we can have the pediatrician or neonatologist be outside, he can just be wearing a cap, mask, which is N95 of course, gown or a OT scrub, gloves and shoe cover. He need not be in the full hazmat suit. If the baby is being given to him outside, warmer is outside, he's standing outside, and the baby is handed over to him. When you specifically look at the do's and don'ts, what comes to my mind is that in the do's, protective gear as required for that level of care should be worn. There should be no breach in asepsis, as well as no breach in personal protective equipment. We must assemble and check the functionality of the resuscitation equipment. That should be done before. Report any splash or cut or any needle stick that occurs to you while you are there in the labor room or in the operation theater. So far as the don'ts go, don't adjust or tamper with your visor or with your mask once you are inside, once you are donned and inside the labor room or the OT. Do not perform suction routinely. For babies, do not perform suction routinely, and do not intubate with the visor which is shifted up or something when your visor becomes fogged and inadvertently you just shift it up and then you are trying to intubate. So that has to be consciously kept in mind, that this will kind of amount to your breach in PPE, and this is the time when somebody might need to get quarantined because there has been a breach in PPE. Otherwise, these are the usual do's and don'ts. And the last thing that I would say is, when the COVID status is not known, take it as suspect COVID and use all the personal protective equipment that is required and deal with that. And if it is clearly COVID negative, you would deal with her as any regular patient, and we are talking about RT-PCR. If RT-PCR is negative and the mother doesn't have any symptoms, she's just from a containment zone or whatever, then you deal with her as any regular patient whose delivery is being done. So we in our hospital have created 3 different areas: OT for COVID suspect, COVID positive, and OT for non-COVID. Similarly, labor room for COVID suspect and positive, and labor room for absolutely clear, which is non-COVID. So these are the different areas that have been created just for conducting the delivery, and accordingly.
Can you minimize it to 2 areas? One for negative and the other for positive or suspect, or 3 areas are required? Because it is difficult to create in a hospital 3 different areas for delivery and OT and labor room.
So Amit, you would basically require 2 OTs for section with COVID, section without COVID, and 2 labor rooms, or at least some kind of partition, 1 labor room or a labor table on in a particular. I mean, you need to create these things which are not readily available in the hospital.
And everybody in that OT or labor room should have a N95 or surgical mask. Also, somebody can wear there if he has visor.
No, we are talking about non-COVID.
Any non-COVID or COVID. COVID may definitely yes, not known or negative COVID. Then can surgical mask can do or not?
To be on the safest side, if it is status unknown and you need to go ahead with the delivery or the cesarean section, take it as potentially suspected. But if you're clear that yes, it is negative, then you can go ahead, and then you just need the usual OT attire that you would do for any other surgery where COVID was non-existent. Pre-COVID area, what you were doing, you would do that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody in the panel do something differently, or is it what most people do?
We are using surgical mask for non-COVID and also an eye shield, even for people who are wearing spectacles or glasses. But for COVID suspected, we actually call them PUI, person under investigation. So that, and that's a big label on the electronic medical record as well as on the patient's door outside, so that we know it is for the stigma, so that people don't want to be called COVID suspected or something like that. And then treat them as suspected as positive in terms of the PPE we need to wear.
Okay, because N95 masks are in scarcity most of the places, so they should be used appropriately. So that is fair enough. Thank you. Thanks for the input. And so what do you want to depict with this wonderful, colorful diagram, Dr. Sushma?
No, they are not my diagrams, I must confess. These are from Dr. Satyan, who it is there in his article, and these are his beautiful creations. So here it's showing that this is the person who's within that room if he is going to receive the baby. I'm not sure if my pointer works there, but so this person is inside and he is in full PPE. But if the next one, just show the next one. Next slide.
Two slides are there.
So one is when somebody is outside, you can just remain outside and you can be given the baby. And the other one is when you are right into the area, but your warmer or whatever is at least 6 feet away, or the isolate is 6 feet away from the mother's birthing area. So these have been the depictions by Dr. Satyan in his article. And like it says, some of the things which we are not completely following, like there's something which says no, the previous slide said something about maybe delayed cord clamping or skin to skin care. So like it says no skin to skin contact, but delayed cord clamping, yes. So the Indian guidelines definitely delayed cord clamping, and skin to skin is permitted. It can be done.
Okay, and is negative pressure in the room, if it is not structurally made, then can you do something locally to have a bit of negative pressure in the OT room or the labor room? Does some exhaust help?
Yeah, so that will be actually quite crude, but when we had to do things like this overnight, things had to be created. The first case came to our hospital on the 14th of April. So we had to just do it quickly. And that was the thing when it was done, that you have an exhaust which can carry the things outside, and the exhaust is towards the outside. It's not within the corridor, or it's not opening towards the corridor of the hospital, it's opening outside. And then we got the AC engineers to look at the air conditioners, which were split air conditioners, and their air exchanges and other things. But overnight, what was done was just put in exhaust.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Anything differently, Dr. Ish, Dr. Makoto, which you practice in this? Is an isolate better than say a radiant warmer? Some people, like Japanese guidelines I was looking at, and they said that we use incubator instead of radiant warmer during resuscitation of COVID positive mothers.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Nakamura.
Thank you. In my country, we have very small number of N95, and we need to protect ourselves. So we will use the closed incubator and the resuscitation in it.
Okay.
Can I?
Okay. So yes, Dr. Kiran, anything?
Yeah, no, just one additional thing, and sorry if I missed, if ma'am already mentioned, but we are using video laryngoscope routinely for COVID positive moms. So for intubation of babies. So we are using, because again, that was in discussion with RTs, and everyone agreed that to stay away from the face, we are using a video laryngoscope for routine intubation of COVID.
Oh yes, that will help in decreasing aerosolization.
Yeah.
Amit, I just had a very small submission here that for transport, we are using incubators to transport such babies to the NICU. So they are not going in an open this thing. So they are in transport incubator. But the resuscitation, we are not using incubators.
This is for only positive mothers or for all babies?
Or suspect or
yeah,
positive.
or suspected. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to transfer the baby to NICU. Suppose it's a preterm baby or a baby with distress, or a baby who's asphyxiated and maybe with through meconium and has respiratory distress. So all such babies who would anyways need to be put into NICU, so that their transport is via transport.
So most important take home message from this slide would be to have your resuscitation counter either outside the labor room or OT, or if that is not possible, then maintain it at least 6 feet or 2 meters away from where the baby is born, from the point, not head or leg end, but from the uterine end. 2 meter distance should be maintained for the neonatal resuscitation trolley. That is an important message from this, I can see. So what precautions during resuscitation? During intubation, you have told that video laryngoscopy can be used. Dr. Sanjay Wazir, anything else you would like to do?
Yeah, most of the things we have already covered in terms of the only two things that you should do is like to reduce the number of intubation attempts. You know, the senior-most person should go at the managing the airway. And then second is that you should always have one more person, even observing from a distance. Basically, sometimes when the commotion around a severely asphyxiated baby is high, then you tend to make that mistakes, like touching your face, doing things like, so somebody who's like pointing out all the time, like correct, those things are important. And LMA is something which you probably can use to reduce in case you have a difficult intubation or you have, because that the aerosol generation would be much lesser than trying to attempt multiple ventilations. Apart from that, the other important thing is when you're doing a resuscitation, something which seals the face, more correctly. For example, I find TPs use a much better way rather than bag and mask, because bag and mask tends to slip a couple of times when you're doing, and maintaining an effective bag and mask seal is sometimes practically difficult. So in those situations, probably you could use it, but again, there is no much data to suggest that one is better than the other in COVID situation.
Okay. Now we have not discussed most things, but Dr. Kiran, this question is on to you that can you briefly again dwell upon what PPE kit we need to wear in NICU? Just reiterate, most of the things have been told, but anything if we have missed out?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I mean, you have to be extra careful when some newborn is on respiratory support. So baby who's born to COVID positive mom, they're on respiratory support. There you have to be extra careful, especially. And I mean, those babies, we are following full PPE precautions only. If babies are asymptomatic, they're anyway. A lot of these babies are staying with mom only, and so there we are not only when during the interaction we are taking full precautions. And as you can see on the slide, you mentioned, this minimum is respiratory protection. At least you need to have either you can have a N95 ideally, or if you have a 3-ply mask with a face shield, that is, and plus or a goggles, that is something we need to be protected. But if you're going to do a procedure or handle the baby, or if you're intubating, or if you're dealing with examining the baby who's even on CPAP or BiPAP or ventilated, there I think you need to have a full protective gears to protect yourself.
Okay. Surgical mask is also acceptable, especially like, is there a different PPE kit for babies who are known to be negative, COVID negative? Baby was admitted and we haven't had him in the area in which suspect cases or PUI, as Dr. Ish called, person under investigation. He has been proven to be COVID negative, and then he shifted to a COVID negative NICU. So there a surgical mask will do. Does the staff require a full PPE kit there as well, or only that NICU dress of kurta pajama with a 3-ply mask is enough?
So I think, I think they're negative, then you don't need to be paranoid about it. I think there's two-way thing. One is you getting infected, but you don't need to transmit it to baby as well. So that's why all those standard precautions, contact precautions, you need to be extra careful. But I think we started now, 3-ply mask itself may not be enough because there is still some transmission possible. So 3-ply with additional PP with the face shield, or N95. I think these two probably should be followed by a physician.
Okay. Thank you. And gloves all the time? Should we wear well-fitting gloves for hand protection all the time, or only if we are touching the baby? And if we are having the gloves all the time, then are we changing it all the time?
I think during examination probably yes. But again, if confirmed COVID negative, I don't think if you're doing a good hand hygiene, you don't have to always wear. You examine and then you can wash off your hands. Aerosol transmission is more worrisome. Hands and all you can. But if you're doing procedure, yes, obviously you need to have fitted gloves. You don't have to wear them all the time.
Till we know the status of COVID, okay, and baby's child is symptomatic, then if we are doing with gloves, then how frequently do we change our gloves? And the hand sanitization which we do, sterilium or anything, chlorhexidine alcohol which base, do we have to wash the gloves in the same way, or what do we do?
If you're asking ideally, so every
ideally
interaction or
like
every
how much leeway we can take, because there is a lot of confusion. Glove sisters, they wear the glove and then they continue it for 4 hours altogether.
Of course not. I think only mask recommendation is for 4 to 6 hours. You can use same mask for 4 to 6 hours. And if you're taking breaks in between, you have to hang this mask in between in a paper bag and then carefully again put it on. But for the gloves, ideally, I don't think you should be taking risk. Once you done your procedure or handling with the baby, they should be disposable and you should throw and use the next. Because wearing gloves itself is very tiring. I think in the mask you can take risk, but for the gloves, I wouldn't be taking risk. Ideally, you do one set of interaction with the baby or procedure, whatever you're doing, and once you're done, just remove the gloves and throw them off, and next time use a new set of
Then
gloves.
per staff nurse, 50 to 100 gloves may be required per shift.
So I think you need to practice minimal handling, and you have to probably. I think. See, I mean, there is a difference between what ideally can be done and what is but see, you need to be consciously aware, you're using these gloves. If you're touching anywhere else, I think there's chance of contamination. So if you're doing something,
I
you can.
also feel that if it is only suspect and you do not, looking at the low incidence in newborns,
I think you don't have to be
without
paranoid.
gloves would be better off.
Yes, that's why I think without gloves will be better off. Then you can do your hand washing very carefully. But yes, if somebody is positive COVID, and then you have to be a bit extra careful, because we still don't know how the disease is presenting in these babies.
Thank you, Dr. Ish, Dr. Makoto, Dr. Ish, anything differently you would like to say?
We routinely, even before COVID, we used to have a very good hand hygiene, as I think other people do, and we used to sanitize our hands before touching and after touching the baby. That has been universal earlier. Now, obviously, with in ICU, specifically if you are going in ICU, that we are wearing gloves as well after cleaning with hand sanitizer. So that has been routinely done, but we throw the glove away. Now I can understand that it can consume a lot of gloves. However, again, minimal handling is not every person who is in the team has to go in and see the baby and touch the baby as well. Obviously, the most relevant person, that's where your eyes and ears are. And you get a lot of input from the nurses. So we have to be very cautious in managing our healthcare supplies, which is only for us. And we need to be very judicial in using masks as well. So one thing I would like to add, I know you're talking about gloves now, but what we have done recently is we are putting a surgical mask over N95 for attending deliveries. And when we come back, we throw the surgical mask away and actually replace another delivery, so that we can save the more expensive N95 mask. I know sometimes it looks very ridiculous to wear so many things on the top.
Like this has been recommended by many over here as well. This has been recommended by many people are doing here as well. In the OPD as well, they are doing it.
Correct. So I'm glad, I mean, I tried in the last 2 calls, so it works. And in the sense that at least in our mindset, it works.
Thank you. Dr. Koto, anything different? Because this is a very, very key issue. PPE kits in NICU, in COVID negative, COVID positive, and this is the main thing which bugs all of us.
Yeah, it's very important, I think. And basically, I agree to everyone. And in my country, the ridiculous things, the COVID cases are very few, but the PPE already running out. So we don't have enough N95, and we don't have enough the hand and alcohol. So we need to be very, very careful to use it.
Okay. Thank you. Now we move on to the next question after this. What precautions during this we have taken? So, Dr. Sushma and Dr. Deepak, should neonates born to COVID-19 suspect or confirmed mothers? This is the most important question I have for you too. So many people have referred this question on my WhatsApp. Should babies born to suspected or COVID positive mother be kept in isolation? And if yes, then how long? And if no, then do we keep them with the mother in the COVID ward itself? Now, this is the very important query, and Dr. Deepak, kindly enlighten us on this.
Okay. You want me to speak on that?
You or Dr. Deepak both.
Sushma, you can start and I can pitch in. Sushma, you can start, please.
I just have very clear things that the baby born to a person under investigation, suspect COVID, or a COVID positive mother, the baby could be either healthy or the baby could be somebody requiring admission into the neonatal unit. If this baby is healthy, let's look at what is the possibility. There can be two possibilities. One is that you can keep the baby and the mother in the same room, which is a room where the baby's cot is about same thing, 6 feet away from the mother's bed, and there is a caretaker who is willing to take care of this baby. The mother uses mother uses the mask. She does hand hygiene and she cleans the surfaces that are there around, and she holds the baby and directly breastfeeds the baby. This is one. But if in a crowded place you do not have such kind of cubicles where mother and baby can be together, the other option can be that yes, all these mothers who are COVID suspect are in one area and the babies are in another area, and somebody else is taking care of the baby, but express breast milk is fed to these babies in that area. So express breast milk is expressed using hand or using a pump in a hygienic manner. This is fed by the caretaker to the baby. That's about the healthy baby. Ideal will be that we have single room cubicles, single rooms where mother and baby are in the same room and there is a caretaker. But most often
caretaker should be COVID negative. So you really need to have somebody really.
Okay, so let me give a practical thing to it. Getting the test done of that caretaker and ensuring that she is negative or whatever, and then allowing her, it's practically not possible, though that would be the ideal. So what we are right now doing is, this is a lady who's not staying with the couple the lady who's delivered this baby. So she's from some other household, but their relative or friend who is willing to come and look after the baby. And this one obviously is asymptomatic and is not from a containment zone. So we take it that yes, she is unlikely to be infected. But there could be one odd chance that yes, she could be. That's the way that we are going about right now. Now looking at the baby who requires to be hospitalized or who requires to go into the NICU, then you will have to have a separate area which we call as neonatal COVID facility, where you will have to have your isolates, which are closed house isolates, or what we call as the incubators. You need to have your CPAP or mechanical ventilator, preferable than NIV or high flow nasal cannula. So if the baby just requires non-invasive, then CPAP is better than these two. And if the baby requires to be intubated and mechanically ventilated, then of course mechanical ventilator. So as soon as the mother's test is negative, we can transport this baby back into the main ICU or main NICU. But if the mother's test is positive, this baby is tested, and if this baby then remains in that neonatal COVID facility till the baby is discharged. Then this baby born to a COVID positive mother is not mixed with, taken into the main NICU. That's what is the guideline, and that's what we are following as of now. We can have inputs from other panelists as to if they are doing anything different. I hope I'm clear on what I've said.
Yes. So, Dr. Ish, what do you practice there? COVID positive mother and baby is healthy, mother is healthy. What do you do in US?
No, I agree with Dr. Sushma Nangia. She's right on top of the points here with the guidelines recommended by AAP, and we are actively following those guidelines, which means that the COVID positive mom, who is again symptomatic versus not symptomatic, there is a little bit
asymptomatic mom. Asymptomatic
mom is but positive mom is wearing mask.
Baby.
Yes, she's wearing mask.
80% of that would be the same. 80 to 85% would be asymptomatic both.
Correct. So what we are doing is she's wearing a mask and hand hygiene. And if she prefers to keep the baby in her room during her hospital stay, then she is allowed to do so with two different things. Either she can keep a distance of 6 feet, as mentioned here, or she has some kind of curtain between the baby and the mom, and she is allowed to nurse with all precautions and contact precautions at the same time, as well as again, if she wants to pump, as she's allowed to do that, we can give EBM to the baby. So I don't differ with current discussion.
Okay, Dr. Makoto, how do you handle such a situation in Japan?
The personally, in my opinion, I think the mother condition is good. No need to separation. However, in the society Neonatal Society in Japan, they recommended that they separate and give formula milk. So in my hospital, we still have lots of arguing about this.
Okay, so in Japan, you separate the parents.
Yeah.
I would like to tell everybody that Dr. Makoto's wife is also a neonatologist, and she specializes in breastfeeding, and she's an extreme like you, Dr. Sushma, a breastfeeding enthusiast.
Yeah. So the kuru. So so you know the many other hospitals the separate immediately, but we still considering the how we keep mom and babies together.
Okay. So is there any option of giving the parents a choice, that telling them about the risks of staying together and the risk of acquiring it postnatally versus separation? Can it be a parent's choice as well, that we don't want to do this, I don't want to put my baby at risk? Especially this can occur if there has been a death in the family due to COVID. So mother must have acquired it from somewhere, and it is possible that some elderly or somebody has died in the family because of COVID, and then the mother is apprehensive that I will pass on this COVID to my newborn baby. So is there any role of giving an option to the family that, okay, like, we want you to breastfeed, but what is your choice, and we will respect your judgment? Dr. Ish, Dr. Kiran?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Amit. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that portion is also mentioned in the guidelines. So we have those options available to parents and moms. And however, in that case, the well baby nursery, so babies more than 35 weeks, otherwise healthy, they would have gone to well baby nursery. If mom is positive, either the baby will stay in the nursery, in the mom's room, or the baby will come to the NICU in a separate room. That baby will not go to well baby nursery for fear of contaminating or infecting other babies in case the baby turns out to be positive, because it has been shown. I think we went through the initial data about 0.3% and less than 2% all over the world infectivity, but there are babies who have been turned positive or negative in the first 24 hours, have turned positive at 48 hours. So I don't know whether we are touching that part or not yet, but when we are testing the babies, then there is another curve happening, the changes of the testing from negativity to positivity later on. I'm not sending those babies to well baby nursery. That's one thing I wanted to say. In that case, we are referring them to a NICU. It's more like a step down, but it's a separate room, dedicated nurse, dedicated equipment. And in my place, we don't have a negative room in that particular hospital. But if patient needs a further admission, or a mom is discharged and that observed or testing or PUI, then that baby get transferred to our tertiary care facility.
Okay, so Dr. Kiran, anything else you would like to add, or same?
No, I think very much on similar lines. So baby friendly, we don't separate. We encourage not to separate, and just take extra precautions and breastfeeding, or we allow them to extract. We give them the pump and instructions. We have a whole leaflet of what precautions needs to be taken. We hand over them. Yeah, one request is sometimes the nationals or Qatari, they have this nanny who will look after. So so there we basically test the nanny or the caregiver. Sometimes some elderly person who wants to look after, we test them, and then they look after the baby, and mom just give express milk. So we have kept that option open, but mostly we have a single room NICUs. So we have 54 rooms for 54 babies. So it's quite spacious room, so we can space out. But now we have opened a new COVID hospital. So only if they come positive, soon they come positive, the mom and the baby shifted there, and there the single room NICU is not there. So the baby stays in the sort of COVID facility which Sushma ma'am said. So similar sort of arrangement is there.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Deepak. Any final word on this and breastfeeding? So breastfeeding was left out earlier. I left it for this point itself. So universal breastfeeding to all well babies, or again some controversy over there as well, to feed or not to breastfeed?
So as of now, if you see, breastfeeding should be done because of two reasons. First of all, people have looked at presence of virus in the breast milk, and none of the studies have found any virus in the breast milk. So most likely it is not transmitted through breast milk. Second, and more importantly, those mothers who get infected with the virus, they have secretory IgA in the milk against the virus, corona 2 virus. So the mothers who are infected, if they feed their own milk, it also provides protection to their baby against infection. So it is important to give breast milk, and it is important to give, if the baby is in NICU, it is important to give mother's own milk so that baby gets antibodies against coronavirus. So that is, so only thing which I wanted to add in this whole discussion which we have done till now about isolation versus rooming in is that in India, most of the births will occur in public health facilities. Private hospitals are not going to deliver COVID hospitals. So if the private hospital get information timely, they will shift these mothers to big government hospitals. There may be COVID hospitals, there may be usual hospital with COVID deliveries. And there will not be any rooms, separate rooms available to keep the baby in each room, mother and baby in each room. You will have big wards there. So the question is, if there are big wards and there are no rooms, should baby still be kept with mother in the same bed? So I will say still they should be kept, because there are benefits even in keeping babies with mother because of better breastfeeding, because of most of the mothers being asymptomatic. And even if baby gets infected, although the chances of getting baby infected if baby is if mother is wearing a mask, if mother is practicing hand hygiene, if mother is cleaning surroundings, even if baby is close to mother, then baby getting infected chances are very less. So look at practical situation, how COVID hospitals are managed in India. COVID hospitals where the positive mothers are kept are sealed from outside. It is very difficult for a person to access that area. Everybody will be wearing PPE kits. So a person, even a usual household person, cannot go inside. If you are admitting a caretaker, whether it's a nanny or it is a household person from relative who is not exposed, that person has to stay there throughout. So in practice, what actually will happen in India, if you are rooming in with mother, baby will be on the same bed, unless you are giving separate rooms, which is very unlikely in bigger cities like Delhi and Mumbai, which are seeing most of the cases. So I'd like to ask Dr. Sushma how they are going in their unit, because if you want to separate, then giving EBM is not an easy task. You have to have a separate pump. That container has to be cleaned once it comes out of the COVID area. Then you are taking it, transporting to another area. So how you are managing if you are having a big ward with all mothers staying in it same ward?
Yeah. So, Amit, you want me to answer this? Because
yes, that's a very important thing, because if we have to send express breast milk, then we are sending it from a positive area to a negative area. So how do we transport it?
So yeah, I'm responding to that, but just also have a look at the watch and accordingly.
Yes. Take 20 seconds to answer that, then we move on.
All right. So Deepak, and to the rest of the people who are looking at this aspect, what we have done is, because obviously being a big government hospital which delivers something like 13 to 14,000 deliveries each year, so we definitely don't have these single rooms for mother. It's only for very privileged ones who could actually go into those so-called private wards, which are very few in number. So majority mothers are in huge long wards, and their beds are now they are spaced out a little bit more as compared to before, but yes, they are in the same area. So what we are doing right now is, the place where these COVID positive mothers are, the milk is being, my milk bank counselor goes to these wards in full PPE. She is supporting and helping these mothers for expression. So the woman who's delivered today, she needs more help as compared to the one who was delivered yesterday.
आम आदमी के लिए बताओ, आम आदमी के लिए जिसके पास ये सब नहीं है.
So you need to have a person who is, that could be just the nurse of that particular ward. You definitely will have a nurse in the ward where the positive mother is kept. So that nurse has to help that mother express the milk, tell her how to clean her hands, how to wear the
When
mask
she
and stuff
does
like
that,
that.
she expresses the milk,
Absolutely.
and then the
And
milk
now the
in the
milk is
container.
expressed. Yeah. So this milk, what we are doing is expressing is into a container, which is a sterile container available in the hospital, the kind of something like a 30 ml, 40 ml small dibbi with a cap that is being used, which we usually use for sending some samples. That sterile thing is being used, and now this is placed in a tray. It's labeled, it's from Kavita, Savita, Anuradha, whatever. So the tray is carried by the guard outside the ward, taken to that ward where the nanny with the baby is, and this tray is, she takes it back. Those things are, the milk is used, and they are disposable sterile containers which are thrown. Initially we tried with stainless steel dibbis, but to get them back, to get them washed and then again use was becoming cumbersome. So this is what we have resorted to, and it's working pretty fine for us.
Okay, okay, thank you. So it is possible, but a bit though cumbersome, it is possible. We should try. So what should be the immediate care after delivery? We have seen about cord clamping, we have discussed skin to skin, it can be given, bath, probably not, breastfeeding or not, we have already discussed. And so we can leave and move on.
Yeah.
So Dr. Deepak and Dr. Sanjay, what are the symptoms of COVID-19? We have this triad of fever, cough and breathing difficulty in adults. Does that hold true in neonatal period as well, or neonates behave a bit differently than adults or older children? So Dr. Deepak?
So if you look at the slide which I showed earlier, so symptoms which were seen in newborn babies are fever and some degree of pneumonia. So pneumonia was almost universal, but what happened that these neonates were worked up and they found some shadows in CT scan or X-ray. Clinically, most of the babies were having only mild symptoms of fever, and few babies having lethargy. So we have limited maybe around 27, 28 neonates reported till now, but symptoms are mild, fever and breathing difficulty, that's all.
Okay, thank you. And so Deepak, could you also tell how do you diagnose this in newborns? When you suspect it from a positive mother or a symptomatic baby admitted, how do we diagnose? RT-PCR is the gold standard, Dr. Deepak Chawla?
Yeah, so RT-PCR is the gold standard. So as present, the country's guidelines say that if mother is positive, COVID infected, that the first sample of baby should be taken as soon as after birth as possible, so that we look at possibility of vertical transmission. Then, because baby will be roomed in mother, then second sample should be taken between 5 and 14 days. Typically towards 14 days if baby remains asymptomatic. But if baby becomes symptomatic earlier, then you can take a sample earlier also. We need to take nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal sample. But if baby is intubated, then you can also take tracheal aspirate.
Okay. So first sample soon after birth and second at 5 days or 14 days?
So you can take between 5 and 14 days. If baby remains asymptomatic, then you can take towards 14 days, because baby will be, if mother and baby are well, they will be most likely sent to home as per current discharge policy, or they will send to a COVID home, which is a place for all COVID positive.
You're not audible.
Hello?
Hello?
Am I audible?
Yes, now.
Okay, so what I was saying is that the second test should be done between 5 and 14 days. If baby remains asymptomatic, try to do it towards 14 days because that by that time the incubation period is ending. But if baby becomes symptomatic, then you can do earlier also.
Can I just comment here? I think, and Dr. Ish can support me. If the AAP recommendation is 48 hours, because we had this discussion in our unit also. They are suggesting to repeat in 48 hours because initially I thought it will be 4 or 5 days. So there is a difference, like AAP recommendation and what we are following it in India. Dr. Ish?
So you are taking sample at birth, then again at 48 hours, and then 5 to 14 days.
Okay. Okay.
So
okay.
That is what you are saying?
Yes. Yes.
No, so we earlier had that 48 hours, but because of testing limitations, we have removed that 48 hours.
Okay.
And we are saying that because it is not adding anything to the what you are managing. You are anyway, you are rooming in with mother. And if baby remains asymptomatic, then doing at 48 hours not adding anything. So why not to delay it?
More
to
practical.
5 to 14 days?
Makes sense.
Okay, thank you. So oropharyngeal or nasopharyngeal and intubated patients tracheal. Now, Dr. Deepak, the next question is again for you. If the mother is in COVID-19 positive, his mother is COVID-19 positive in isolation in hospital, when do we discharge this asymptomatic baby?
So if both mother and baby are asymptomatic, then both should be discharged. We discharge at 24 to 48 hours because normal delivery will discharge at 24 to 48 hours, section will discharge at 48 to 72 hours, and because they are roomed in, they both will go together to home. But if mother is sick, then baby can be discharged at 24 to 48 hours with a attendant who is well and who is negative and can take care of the baby.
Even if baby is positive?
Yeah, even if baby is positive, you can discharge and ask them to look for danger signs. Then baby can come back, because at present, if you look at the Government of India's guidelines, asymptomatic persons can be discharged.
No, what is the state? Because state policies are very different. So
No, state policies.
No. It's the same central policy where if the person is asymptomatic,
okay, that's good. That's good.
Be discharged home for home isolation. She's positive, she's tested positive, but she is asymptomatic. She goes home in home isolation. So that's the policy now. You don't hold on every positive mother in the hospital till repeat testing says that she's negative. Right, Deepak? That is how it's happening.
Yeah. So send to either
Yes,
home
that
or
is the
COVID
national
home.
guideline.
Yeah, if the home is not good enough for home isolation, it's just a cramped one single room, many people stay, then she goes to a COVID care center, otherwise home isolation.
And we call her back at 5 to 14 days for repeat testing.
Yes,
the baby and the mother.
Yes.
Isn't it? Okay. So what should be, this has already been discussed in detail about the attire of the doctors. And now if the baby is having symptoms, he has come at 5 or 7 days or 10 days of life with severe symptoms of a severe acute respiratory illness. What specific treatment would you like to give, Dr. Deepak, to this baby? I would like to have all inputs from every panelist, Dr. Kiran and Dr. Ish and Dr. Makoto. Any role of HCQ, azithromycin? US has imported a lot of HCQs from India. Are they using it, Ish?
Nothing.
Dr. Ish has, he had to go for another meeting. I think he wrote in the chat box and he has moved.
So Dr. Deepak, any role of any?
So as of now, you see, there are only very extremely in single-digit babies who have been very sick to sick neonates. So you don't have any experience about any of these drugs. So anyway, hydroxychloroquine, we will not use in neonates. No experience with azithromycin. I don't know about plasma or steroids. At present, we don't have any experience. But if someone wants to use it, it will remain experimental only. At present, the guidelines don't recommend it.
Yes.
They'll give supportive therapy.
Any role of steroids if the patient is significantly sick?
Not recommended as of now.
Not recommended as of now. Thank you. And so it is not recommended. It is any respiratory support is different from other standard COVID negative patient. Any difference?
So use standard respiratory management. So only thing is that those interventions which cause aerosol generation, like heated high flow nasal cannula, giving non-invasive nasal ventilation, they are more likely to generate aerosols. So try to avoid this. But because CPAP has been so good with us and CPAP saves babies, so give CPAP, start with CPAP with lowest flow possible. But if baby is not managing well on low CPAP, then intubate early. And while baby is intubated, on expiratory limb, use the filter.
Yeah.
The usual bacterial filter works well even for filtering bacteria, these viruses, because of the electrostatic charge it holds. Even baby is intubated, if you have facility, use inline suction. And anyway, you will use full PPE kit along with the visor or shields. Whenever you are suctioning, you are intubating. So the usual sort of precautions for using ventilating these babies.
Okay, excellent. Dr. Kiran, any drugs which you use, anything differently? Desmivir,
No, nothing for newborn. No, there is
Nothing
only
for
supportive
newborn?
care and standard care and extra precaution. That's it. And Dr. Deepak said
Okay,
about
thank you.
disconnections. Yeah, about disconnection of the tubings and use inline suction. That's it.
Okay, lowest flow CPAP, that is the best. And inline suction, what about inline suction? Any word about that? We
I think
probably
Dr.
don't use it in newborns. Adults use it very frequently.
Dr.
we use
Deepak
if
mentioned. Yeah,
it is available, can be used.
Inline suction.
we
Okay.
routinely use it for anyways, but specifically for COVID, we are strongly recommending. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That is an important take-home message for all again. And so, going towards the end, COVID negative mother.
Oh, yeah.
We
I
have
think we have
discussed
done
this.
this. Yeah, I
We
think
have done this.
Yeah, we have done this.
I think, Amit, I would suggest, that will be my suggestion, that if there are questions, look at them.
Yeah, we have discussed most of the things. Now we can open the house for any questions which are there.
Amit sir, I think the Q&A part and the chat box is flooded with the questions.
Yeah, I was trying to answer some of.
Yeah, even I tried to type some
I also
answers.
tried to answer a few.
So I think most of these have been addressed, but
Yes.
if you try to look something.
So one
is missing,
question
then
is, if incubation period is at least 5 days, then why the newborn is tested within 48 hours, or within first test is within 48 hours? Basically, that is mainly to know transplacental
vertical transmission.
infection.
Transmission.
Yeah, for
And
vertical
second test is to know postnatal acquisition.
Yeah.
And in adult, okay, they say that in adults, resuscitation in COVID bag and mask has been replaced by direct intubation. So would you recommend that
No.
in newborns as well?
No, certainly not.
No.
No.
Okay, and should vernix, drying and vernix caseosa be removed in neonates delivered by corona positive mother? Are they infected?
So till now, amniotic fluid, cord blood, everything has been found to be negative. So do what we do in a normal newborn care. Why to do anything different?
My only concern in that is, some sample reported that stool is positive. Now, so if vaginal delivery, there is always some chance of contamination. So would you be worried about this risk? And, that's why we were arguing about doing skin to skin, the practice of vaginal delivery and directly putting on the chest. That practice something we are not encouraging.
Okay. Another important practical question which is there is, often with corona, it is there that 3-4 people in a family may become positive. So if we send the baby home early, do we take a precaution that nobody at home is positive or in home quarantine? And if that is the case, then we keep the baby in NICU itself?
No. Why do you want to keep an NICU? NICU is a hotbed. It is a risk factor of dying. So
if there is a family member with who has COVID infection at home, baby is negative, still we can send him home.
So
and
they can
take standard precautions.
They can wear masks, take precautions. So there have been now literature which has shown, especially a study by Farazi et al. From Iran, which has shown that those mothers who used mask, baby were not infected. Those mothers who did not use mask and fed the babies, kept the baby without any precautions, because their test came later on, their baby got infected. So using mask, hand hygiene, following standard precautions, baby will not get infected, especially baby is getting breast milk, baby will get antibodies. Even if baby gets infected, infection is going to be mild. So there is no problem in discharging baby at home.
Okay, excellent. Now, Dr. Umang has asked that, can they be false negative? So yes, obviously false negativity is almost 30%. What about false positivity with RT-PCR? There have been many cases in private labs where false positivity has been seen very in high proportions. Now, what could be the cause, and is it just poor lab technique or something else?
I can just mention here, because I mentioned about a couple of cases. In our lab, it was cross-contamination. Because they were running the labs, a lot of samples simultaneously. We will like a couple of our babies got positive, and then it was checked. Repeat sample was negative. So cross contamination is known, and secondly, faulty this thing can happen, because some of these RT-PCR kits have come up but they are more of false negative than false positive. So I think it's mainly cross contamination is the cause there. But anyway, any others can comment on that.
Deepak?
So I think it is the false positive we are showing basically from private labs. So if you look at RT-PCR, the private labs usually don't do RT-PCR. It is a domain of medical colleges, microbiology department. So it is a new skill which they have to learn. So this is possible that because the new skill is being learned, some labs may have that contamination issue.
Okay.
But I think the interpretation of any test will depend upon the pre-test probability. So if you are having a green zone, the possibility of having a positive test is very low. Even if you get a positive test, you have to do a repeat test.
Okay, thanks. There is a query, by Dr. Mazumdar, that if a baby is admitted in NICU with a clear-cut indication, there is an apparent cause of some problem like birth asphyxia, do we still need to do COVID test on the mother if we do not have the COVID status of that mother? So every NICU admission, does he need a COVID test or not?
No, you do not need a COVID test for the mother in all such cases. You have a baby
in the baby.
No, I'm telling you the same. You have a baby who's come in for, let's say, hyperbilirubinemia.
Yep.
And he is there with you. There's no reason why you have to test him. But if this baby is now developing some respiratory system of symptoms of new origin, and then you're going to do a bacterial this thing also, and you would test for COVID because this is the COVID time. But you're going to look for, could it be late onset bacterial sepsis? At the same time, you're also looking because he did not have any symptoms in the beginning which were of respiratory origin or of a new onset sickness. So the clear-cut answer is every baby coming to NICU for asphyxia for whatever reason does not need to undergo COVID testing.
Okay, but okay. And Dr. Kiran, do you do tests on all babies or not?
Not all babies, but
not all babies,
mothers we are following, because that's something, every mother who's entering, because we are triaging them to other hospital. So every mother who is coming, she's getting tested. So we already know.
UP, the guideline is that every admission we have to do tests. And I discussed it today with our CMO as well. And he said, "Bhai, admit kar rahe ho, to aapko test karna padega." So this is how because we are in the containment zone, maybe it could depend upon which zone of the country you are in. What is the relative incidence or prevalence of corona in your area? So that could guide you as well.
So Amit, I would like to respond to this. Our hospital is in the area where there are, on all sides, there are areas which are containment zones. So if you've heard of these places, Paharganj, Nabi Karim, Sadar Bazaar, also hospitals actually in the sector and all around, we have these containment zones. Yet the guidelines are not to test everyone who walks in. If it is a symptomatic ILI, that person is tested. If it's a pregnant woman from a containment zone, she is tested even if she is asymptomatic. Otherwise, not everybody. Okay, pre-surgery, they are now surgical people are wanting to get a test done because this patient would be intubated for GA, etc. So that's one deviation that's happening, that anybody who's coming for surgery, but not every patient who is getting admitted.
We are having a problem that surgeons, they don't operate without the test, and we have difficulty in delaying it. So we are done with most of the questions which are there. Air purifiers in NICU, that is an important thing. Is there any role of air purifiers in NICU?
Not to my knowledge.
Maybe Kiran can answer. I don't know.
Yeah, not to my knowledge.
Air purifier, sorry?
In NICU?
Air purifier in NICU?
Not to my knowledge.
No, so we're not using.
Overall. Okay, one word about vaccination in COVID positive babies. Is the standard same vaccination has to be done as without the status of COVID? So BCG should be given to all hepatitis B and OPV. This was asked. IVIG to newborns, no role. Transplacental transfer we have discussed. And so I think pretty much most of the questions we have already discussed. So they must have asked it at some point. Do we need to test COVID in a 2-3 month old coming with fever? Infant coming with fever, do we need to test in all COVID test?
SARI guidelines, follow SARI. Only fever is not indicated. Fever with respiratory symptoms, needing admission.
Fever with
they should
respiratory
rest.
symptoms only.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if you have to admit this baby, fever with
Then-
respiratory symptoms, so then you need to
And
mask
one
this.
last question is, Dr. Deepak, if the baby is significantly symptomatic, what all tests do we need to do for a diagnostic like CBC, CRP, and what all she wants to know? And is it required in IL-6 or what all is required? PCT, LDH, anything else specific for COVID? They want to know any COVID specific test?
So you use usual investigations and you do the RT-PCR. In addition, the other things which have been seen in children and adults is septic shock, DIC, rhabdomyolysis. So one can, if baby is sick, then look at coagulation profile. And anyway, you will do SCRFT and you can do LDH.
Okay.
Okay.
And in
Dr. Kiran-
adults, they are saying that chest X-ray is not that good diagnostic marker or prognostic marker. You should go for early CT. Now, does that hold true for newborns as well in babies who are symptomatic going for CT
I don't
test?
think because it is not going to change management.
Yeah.
And Dr. Kiran has worked on registry for pediatric patients and neonates. He may be able to tell that what all investigations he has included in this registry.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all the questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, all the panelists. Thanks, Dr. Kiran, to be here. Thanks, Dr. Ish has left. Dr. Makoto has left.
No, he's
And,
there.
He's
He's
there.
Dr.
there, he's
Makoto
there.
is here. Dr. Makoto, one
Hi.
final word from you. Do you want to say, my old friend from Australia, we were there together in Australia for 2 years.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very
I-
happy to be here.
I read all the Japanese guidelines about this. They are quite different. They are very aggressive towards prevention of infection. They are you do things differently from us, but our problems are also different. Our demographic profile is also different.
Mhm.
So we should end with this. Dr. Sushma, is it okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Dr. Deepak,
I think we enjoyed this discussion. Thank you very
Yes.
much.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Can I-
Thank you very
Can
much.
I just appeal everyone, like I think NNF has emailed everyone to participate in that the registry which is hosted on the PGI server. It's an open form, so everyone can go and click it and fill in their detail. It is just to acquire more knowledge about newborns, because I think we don't have still much information. So it will be useful that it is open for everyone, even if you're not part of the INCC network. People can
Okay.
go online and put up their experience for the COVID positive moms.
Okay, okay.
I must thank each one of you. Amit sir, thank you so much. We did not look at the watch, but it is almost 7 o'clock, and I had generated a poll in between. 72% of the audience are saying it is excellent, and 25% are saying it is a very good. So this is the thing, and 100% of the audience, they feel that they have learned something which will definitely help in their clinical practice. So I think I thank Amit sir and all the esteemed panelists from India as well as abroad. Thank you so much. And before I finish, I must mention with you one small CSR activity during this time when you are taking care of your patients. We at Tablets India in Chennai, every day we are serving food to 1100 poor people who doesn't have that capacity to purchase, and that had started from the first day of the lockdown, and it will continue till the time the lockdown is continued, and we wish to continue with that, right? So every day 1100 people, the freshly prepared food is being given. And sir, madam, and these are some of the paper cutting clip which I have shown, which has come in the local newspaper, I'm sure. And on behalf of Tablets India, I thank each one of you for present over here. Hope this web talk must have added some value to your clinical practice. We are dedicated to serve you more in the days to come, right? Thank you once again, all the esteemed panelists and Amit sir and all of you. Though we did not take a look at the watch, next time when we organize the program, probably we have to make it for 2 hours.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank
With-
you
with
and
that-
namaskar.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Kiran. Thanks, Dr. Makoto.
Bye,
Bye.
Dr. Makoto. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Please take care, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye, Amit.
Bye.
Hello.
Hi, Kajol. How are you?
Bye, Amit.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Lactation experts and
Bye.
lactation supporters.
Lactation
Yeah.
expert.
Oh,
Yes.
should have
Expert
joined.
and supporter. Yes. Excellent. Very good.
Bye.
Nice
you.
meeting you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.